In this week's video, I'm going to explain why creativity is so important in business. So last week, I made a video about how business schools should spend more time teaching creativity. And in that video, I made a bold claim. I said, your ability to harness creativity is directly related to how successful you are in business. So that's not something that a lot of people in business are talking about. And so I really wanted to dig into this idea of why creativity is important in business. The reason is actually very simple. It's because of competitive advantage. So creativity enables innovation, and innovation creates competitive advantage. So what I want to do here is I want to draw this connection between creativity and competitive advantage, because competitive advantage allows you to make more money. So let's talk a little bit about innovation, because innovation is one of those terms that business people tend to throw around a lot. And I actually have a very specific definition for innovation. Innovation is a new idea. It is imagining something of value that does not exist and making it a reality. So innovation is really hard to do. And it requires you to build your creative muscles in order to apply them to innovation. So let me share with you some of my experience of how this actually plays out in the real world work environment. Now, this is not based on a scientific study. This is just anecdotal data that I'm sharing with you from my experience. If you work in an organization, you'll start to notice that employees fall into three categories. And these are all good categories, and they're all important for running an effective organization. So the first category is employees that use best practices. This is going to be the majority of your staff. And this is people who are really good at following instructions. So I found that generally most people are good at following instructions. And so if you give your people clearly defined roles with instruction books on steps on how to perform their work, most people do a really good job. And one of the great things about living today is that you can find pretty much anything on the internet. So you can go to the internet and download these instruction books full of best practices that give you step-by-step instructions on how you can do most jobs. So this is going to be the bulk of your employees, where you give them a set of instructions and they perform great work. The second category of employee performs process improvement. And so these are employees that take the existing set of instructions, the existing process in place, and ask themselves, how can I take this process and make it even better? And I'm sure you have these people in your organization who are really good at figuring out, how do I take the existing process and take it to the next level? Make it even better. Perform process improvement. The third and final category of employee performs innovation. And my definition of innovation goes even beyond process improvement. So these are employees who can imagine what doesn't even exist yet and make that a reality. From my experience, this is going to be your smallest group of employees because this is really hard to do. Just to give you an example, the difference between these categories is that process improvement might be taking an existing product you sell and figuring out ways to make it even better. Innovation would invent a completely new product that doesn't exist. So when you look at your organization, you have these three categories. You have best practices, you have process improvement, and you have innovation. Now, these are not exact numbers here, and this is going to be different for every organization. But this is just a useful way of understanding what's going on in terms of innovation and creativity. Now, there's 3 important points you need to realize when you're looking at this scale. The first thing is the more your organization can utilize the higher end of this scale, the more value you create. Also, the further you progress up this scale, the more you need to use your creative muscles. And finally, the further up the scale you go, the fewer people in your workforce you're going to have who have the creative skills to apply to these problems. So why is this important? Why am I spending so much time talking about this? Because this scale ties directly to your organization's competitive advantage. Innovation makes it easier for your organization to compete. So just think about this for a minute. If all your organization did was apply best practices, so you're just following the standard set of instructions, well, it's very difficult to compete because your competitor can go out to the internet, download the same set of instructions, and sell the same product out into the marketplace. And what you end up having is 2 exact of the same product, and you end up in price wars. Now, if you can innovate and put a new product out into the market, you can charge whatever price you want because you're not having that competitive pressure. And if you can constantly innovate, you can constantly stay one step ahead of your competition. And that brings us to the big question. How do you build these creative muscles? Well, the answer is very simple. You get a hobby. And this is what art is for. Art teaches us how to dream. It teaches us how to use our imagination, and it teaches us how to use these creative muscles. And what you're going to need to realize here is that you can take these skills that you're developing on this hobby and you can directly apply them to your work, and it'll help you be more successful in business. So what I've done is I've put together a list for you of different hobbies. And I'm going to read through this list, and your job is to listen and see if one of these hobbies piques your interest. You're seeing if one of these hobbies jumps out at you and is something that you could see yourself tackling as a hobby. So here's the list. Writing, poetry, singing, playing musical instruments, dancing, martial arts, acting, stand-up comedy, photography, drawing, painting, sculpture, ceramics, jewelry making, sewing, knitting, interior decorating, gardening, metalwork, leatherwork, and carpentry. So that's just a few of the hobbies out there. But the idea is that you want to pick one and become a master at it. The cool thing is that these are all fun things to do. They all sound interesting to me. But the idea is you only want to pick one, because if you try to do too many of these things, you're not going to become good at any of them. So just pick one hobby and work on it for a decade. And what you're doing is you're building your creative muscles. And again, you're going to be able to use that skill and apply it to business. You're also going to notice that this list does not contain video games. And I do admit that there are some video games out there that are very creative, but I wanted to focus this list on physical activities that have to do with building your imagination and creating something out of nothing. That's what's going to build your creative muscles. So that's it. You pick a hobby, you build your creative muscles, and then you apply those skills in your day-to-day work. It's important not to lose sight of what's really going on here. So we're all business people here. And part of the role of a business person is to be the source of progress in society and to be constantly pushing things forward. You know, people look to you, people look to business organizations to develop new products and to innovate and find new and better ways of doing things, because that's what raises everybody's quality of life. And so that's why it's so important to be innovative. And that's why I say that creativity is important in business. Now, I know this is not a topic they talk a lot about in business school, so I'm interested to hear what you think. If you agree with me or you disagree with me, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And if you liked this video, if you found it helpful, click on the subscribe button. The best way to supercharge a business is through accounting and corporate finance, and I release a new video every week. So come back and check out next week's video.